Thank you for joining us today for the Alumni Association's online professional series webcast. My name is Dave Isbell. I will be your host today. I am the Assistant Director of Alumni Professional Enrichment. We're working here hard to constantly bring you resources and ideas and information that you can use to make your life better. Today, I'm so happy to have three terrific guests with us. We're going to be talking to teachers, parents, and whoever else is out here about how we can use technology to better further our education. So with that, we have Jessica Knott, who is a Spartan for life, as well as an instructional designer and applied researcher for IT services teaching and learning at Michigan State University. In this role, she helps faculty, staff, and academic programs learn to effectively integrate technology into their teaching and research. She's worked in information technology since 1998, spanning the public and academic sectors, with work ranging from K to 16 to adult learning. Knott is completing her dissertation in the Higher Adult and Lifelong Education program at Michigan State University and holds a Master of Arts in Education, focusing on educational technology and K to 16 leadership from the same institution. In her spare time, she hangs out with her husband and two dogs and enjoys reading, volunteering, playing sports, skateboarding, and recreational research. Along with her, we have Heather Dufner, who has been teaching in East Lansing School District for the last 15 years and is just now getting more comfortable embracing technology in the classroom. However, teaching is her passion, and the opportunity to explore technology has opened her instruction to things she never imagined. She lives in Holt with her husband Greg and their 4 children. Last but not least, we have Mary Wever, who's taught 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grades in East Lansing, Michigan since 2008. She loves to find creative ways to integrate innovative technologies into her classroom lessons and craft an atmosphere that engages her students with tools that are motivated to use both inside and outside the classroom. Her students call her the Techie Teacher, and this is a title she strives to keep by attending and presenting at many professional development opportunities to keep up with current trends. In addition to being a teacher consultant for the Red Cedar Writing Project, Wever holds a master's degree in educational technology from Michigan State University. She recently accepted a newly created position as a content curator where she will select students' work to display online while promoting their ideas via social media. Since Wever believes her most important job is being a wife and mother, she strives to be the teacher she would want for her 3 young sons. With that, I will kick it over to Jessica Knott and can't wait to hear what you guys have to say. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Dave. It's a beautiful day here in East Lansing, Michigan for a webinar. It's like 70 and sunny, so wherever you guys are, we hope your weather is as gorgeous. As Dave just mentioned, we are Mary, Jess, and Heather, and this is what we look like, just in case you're curious. We're here to talk to you today about teaching with technology in K through 16 education. And we're hoping to do this through storytelling. We don't want to just tell you about tools and what you can do with them and what they do. We actually want to share stories from our environments and our classrooms and what's worked and what hasn't. So when we started putting this webinar together, we started talking about this picture of the guys on the bus reading a newspaper. And we started talking about why this would be so much less concerning than students on their mobile devices. And we understand that, you have to temper this a bit, but in a lot of ways, that's not very different. It's just the technology that's being used. So we wanted to talk a little bit about why technology was important in teaching and in life in a lot of ways. And we started talking about the things that we've done in our classrooms, and our conversation got very animated. We realized there were so many exciting things that we were talking about that it would be better to kind of give you a little bit of background and data and then move into a storytelling feature. So as we go, I want to reiterate that the chat window is on the left. There's, if you're seeing the chat box and what everybody's saying, just go down a little further and there's a box that you can type in. We really want this to be a conversation. We will write a follow-up blog post to this webinar sharing your stories, concerns, questions, etc. So make sure that you're vocal. We'll ask for questions a couple times throughout this webinar, and we will take time to answer them. I will be in the chat most of this time, so I can answer some of your questions live. Okay, so we started talking about why technology was important in teaching. And the thing that came out was there are so many different types of technology. There's paper, pencil, whiteboards, computers, smartphones, smartboards. So we want you to think about technology as anything, any tool that can help you achieve your teaching goals. We're not just talking about computers here today. To give you a little bit of statistics, this came from a 2009 report from the Department of Education. 97% of teachers, K-12 teachers, let me be clear, in 2009 had one or more computers located in their classroom every day, while 54% could bring computers with them. Now, if you're a teacher in a K-12 classroom, you probably struggle with those computers from time to time and what you can do on your network. But still, that's only somewhat limiting if you think a little bit creatively. The teachers reported that they or their students use computers in the classroom during instructional time often. That was 40% of the people said that. Or 29 said they use it sometimes. So technology is out there, and not just in K-12. So when you think about teaching and you think about what you're preparing your students for, online and technology-enhanced teaching is huge in higher education. So if we don't give some background or some exposure to technology, we're really doing our students a disservice. This is from the National Center for Education Statistics, and this is as of 2012, and it shows just how many students in higher ed are taking online or distance courses. These are fully online. These numbers don't even include blended or technology enhanced. 82.1% of the students are taking some form of fully online course. 82.1% of the students in Michigan are taking some kind of online course. So just think about that for a minute. If we don't give them some sort of background, when they get to college, they'll be taken by surprise. I do see the chat asking if there's a way to make the numbers larger. There is not, but I will link to this on that blog post that follows up and make sure you all have access to that. There was just no way to make it big enough. Sally, 82.1% of college students. That is college only. Good question. So when we were talking about this, we're here today because we believe and have seen that technology in our classroom can motivate creation. And we define technology in a lot of different ways, as I mentioned before. We need to make sure, though, that we're motivating the right things. So banning a cell phone from classroom may be appropriate in some places and not others. Are we motivating students to think critically, or are we motivating them to Google and take the first answer? Today we're going to share some of the technologies that we use that have really helped us create more enriched experiences for our students in the classroom. We do that centered in backward design, which when you boil it down to its very fundamentals, basically you identify what you want your students to know or be able to do, and then you figure out what's the evidence that they've done that. So based on those two things, that's how you build your content. I am about to turn it over to Mary here to talk about a few of the things that you can do in your classroom to identify and make sure that your content is meeting and enriching your students' experience. And we're going to talk about this in tools and teaching mechanisms that we love and have seen are successful. Mary?
Thanks, Jess. Before we continue, I guess I was just going to ask if anyone had some questions. You can be typing those in the chat, and we will do our best to answer those throughout. One thing that I have done as a classroom teacher, and I teach, I will be teaching 3rd grade, but I was teaching 4th grade in East Lansing, is I created a classroom website, and I use my classroom website for absolutely everything. It is a place where I store basically anything that I'm going to be using to share with parents or my students. And it's a place that when parents have questions, a lot of times if they email me with a question, I can just say, go to my classroom website, and the answers are generally on there. If I didn't have my classroom website, I honestly don't know what I would do these days, and I know that a lot of teachers are starting to go that way too. I'm going to show you a picture. This is what my classroom website looks like, and if you want to visit it, it's just www.weverworld.weebly.com. And Jess, can you type that in the chat so they can see that? And Wever's without an A. Our classroom website, basically what it started out as is I wanted a place where I could communicate with parents in a way that was useful for them. So I was thinking, as a parent myself, I'm not a really big fan on receiving newsletters, and honestly I leave them in my child's folder for about a week before I actually look at them. So I thought, how could I engage not just the students but the parents in my classroom? So I started out by having my homepage just be my newsletter. And so if you look at the homepage, that's what it is. It's got things that are coming up, videos that we've made in the class, things like that. There's a calendar at the bottom. I worked at an international school, so my entire website you can translate into multiple different languages, and that's just to cater to the population I was working with. But after a while, I wanted to extend my site a little bit, so I've got useful websites on there, safe places for kids to go when they're at school and at home, and then pictures just to kind of bring the families into the classroom instead of a lot of the families I was working with are international and don't speak English, and a lot of times they were nervous about coming into the classroom, and this was a way to bring the classroom to them and give them information about what their students are doing. After a while, though, every year I was updating my website and making it better and better. I started adding new features. So the math help page started out as a way, teaching fourth grade, a lot of the math that I taught, I would get questions from parents like, what is lattice multiplication? I have no idea what that is. And we were teaching algorithms that parents had never seen before. So I started putting videos on how to do the websites, or I'm sorry, the algorithms on my website so that I could be teaching parents and they could then help their children at home, extending the learning that way. And after a while, this past year I had a student teacher from MSU, and we made it our goal to actually flip math instruction. And what that means is the students would get the instruction at home, so they would watch a 2 to 4 minute video, and then they would come to school and we would go over the concepts, and we were able to do more projects and things like that and extend their learning at school. So the videos then are housed, we actually started making our own videos and we housed those on our website. We're using the same content, the curriculum that we're supposed to be using. We just kind of changed the pedagogy a little bit by flipping the instruction. And we use the tool, the technology website as our tool. Some of the
Hop in here really quick, Mary.
Sure.
Okay, Mary,
Sure.
we had a question about adult education as well as K-12. We have a really good mix here in the chat room of adult, higher ed, and K-12. So I just want to point out that the technology and pedagogical solution that Mary just pointed out is also known as the flipped classroom. And this is huge in higher ed and adult ed right now, where you take a video of the lecture, put that online, and have people watch it on their own. And then you spend your time in the classroom really working through some of the problems. This is really big in practice-based professions like accounting, business, science. So this is not only K-12 but also K-16. I just wanted to make sure that we're addressing all of the audiences and getting at your concerns. So please keep it coming in the chat room. Go ahead, Mary.
Sure. One of the questions, especially about flipped instruction, that I always get is, what if kids don't have access to technology at home? And that is definitely a concern. The way that I have managed my classroom with the flipping is, like I said, the videos are 2 to 4 minutes long, and that's because I didn't want them more than a minute per grade level that I taught. And so when the students come, if they didn't watch the video, they just watch the video in my classroom. There's no penalty or anything for not watching the video at home. Basically, it's seen as homework, and actually my students were really excited to see the new videos, especially if we posted the video a day early and one child was able to see it the night before and we hadn't even gone through the day before's lesson, they would come to school and brag, "Oh, I saw the new video tonight." So the kids were definitely checking up on us, and they were excited to be online. Actually, it was surprising to me because I surveyed my students this year and I asked them, how many of you have the internet at home? 100% did. How many of you have a computer or some sort of device at home? 100%. How many of you have a tablet? It was all but 4 kids. And then how many of you have your own device, like it is yours, no one else's? All but 6. And that was in 4th grade out of 24 students. So I was actually really surprised by that. And the kids were really on board, and the parents really seemed to enjoy the flipping also.
Heather, you've been using the website also. Why don't you talk a little bit about your class website? Mary and I are addressing some questions in the chat room right now.
Okay. Hi, this is Heather. I started with a website because technology is very new to me, and I wanted to do something that I could do on my own, not in front of people, and I could show it to them when I was ready. So my website's very, very different from Mary's. It's a beginning website, but what I love about websites is that you can grow them, and when you get more comfortable with more things, you just add them. So my website is very basic. It has resources for RTI, response to intervention. It has, because I got a lot of parents asking me for extra support for kids, or where can I go to get extra, practice with math facts and those kinds of things. So I put resources on there, and I found parents used it as a way to connect with me before school started. Almost all of my kids had somehow been on my website and seen my pictures, and they felt like they got to meet me before they actually met me. The technology that I use in the classroom is something that I wanted to do it independent of the technology that the kids had outside of school. I didn't know what kids have. I'm actually a teacher who does not have cable, who does not have a computer, and who does not have internet at home. So I am one of those people. So, and my kids, when they have to do a report, they have to go to the library, or they have to come to school with me, or do some other kinds of things. So I did just things that could be done in the classroom with what we had. And website was the first thing to try, and we used the website as a group in class. We have a laptop cart that was given to us through a grant. So grants are a great way, if you don't have a lot of money, grants are a great way to bring those things to your school.
And addressing, oh, go ahead.
I wondered if you wanted me to talk about the blog, or if you want me just to talk about the website.
Go ahead and talk about the website for now. We'll get to blogging later. And to address some of the things, we've got a really interesting conversation going on in the chat window about economic disparities between your students. So things like students not being able to access a computer, not having internet at home, how to address that. Mary already mentioned that she would build in some time for students to watch the videos in her classroom. We talked about higher ed and the access to library technologies, computer labs, the local library. Most towns and cities have a local library with internet access that you can use for educational purposes. And there are times when students are very rural, kind of in the middle of nowhere, where that would become a problem. But most of these things could also be, translated to something like a DVD that you could play in your computer. Internet access is important, but when we're designing in a rural area, we would probably take a little bit more consideration for what is available to most of our students. Another question Larissa had was regarding the stigma that's present when students kind of veer off, and would other students know that they're watching videos because they don't have it at home? That's all pedagogy right there. That's how you teach, how you set that practice up. So maybe instead of saying the people who didn't have internet go over here and watch the videos, say instead now's the time to review before we jump into the group work or to the classroom work. So those are just a couple of ways to mediate that. That's a much bigger issue. We could do an entire webinar on access and technology and making sure that everybody is addressed. So Larissa, please follow up with us after.
Actually,
Go ahead.
Can I just weigh in on that just a little bit? You're right. It's all about the pedagogy, how you set it up. When I set up my classroom at the beginning of the year, obviously we know the most important thing is to create relationships with your students. Make your classroom a very safe place. And the way that I managed the flipping was students would come in after lunch. They would go to one of three groups. One group was I either didn't watch the video or I didn't understand the concept. One is I understood it pretty well. And then the third would be I understood it and I can teach it to somebody else. And I thought at the beginning that kids would lie. I really did. I thought that they would try to go into the two groups where they looked like they knew what they were doing and not want to come to the carpet with me and get extra instruction or watch the video again. I really did think that was going to happen, and so I was ready and I was prepared to deal with that situation. But oddly enough, in my classroom, the opposite was true. And I really do believe that that's because I built such a strong community in my classroom that nobody was judging each other based on if somebody understood something or not. I actually had a ton of kids who did understand concepts try to come to the carpet and get more attention from me or try to get more instruction. And I would understand that they were grasping the concept, so I would send them back to work independently or work with another group. Well, I did work with the kids who were indeed having a hard time. But I was actually extremely surprised by that, and I really do think that it all goes back to building relationships. If you have a classroom community where kids feel safe and failing is okay, because failing, you're not going to learn unless you fail, I really think that that is a powerful thing, and you can have kids take their learning into their own hands and advocate for their own needs.
Okay. Let me get back. Let's keep this moving. We'll keep the conversation going in the chat room, and again, keep those questions coming. We are going to have another time where we stop and address some of those, and we will address them throughout. I just want to say that several times I've told people in the chat room not to hesitate to follow up with us. We will give you our email addresses after this, so this conversation doesn't have to stop at 1:30. This is something that we can help you through with your questions beyond the end of this webinar. So please keep those questions coming. So far, they're just amazing. These are really good things to think about. That continues with videos. So a lot of the concerns surround technology and access and things like that. So Mary, I'm going to have you turn it over to videos to talk a little bit about what you do in your classroom, and then I'll be working in the chat room to address accessibility issues.
Okay. Like I said, we use videos for flipping, but we also, I just want to talk about some of the fun ways that we use videos too. There were a couple times this year, well actually I taught 4th grade, those kids were the safety patrols, and so at the end of the day, about half my class would leave the classroom about 15 minutes early. And that was, it's not lost instructional time, but it could be seen that way, and I didn't want that to happen. But I also didn't want to teach any content that the kids who were gone would miss. So I started showing videos during that time, and one site that I really liked was STEM Bites. There's a Michigan educator who makes them. They're just really short little science, technology, engineering, mathematics videos where he uses his Google Glass to show you how things in the world work. And the kids love those, but we also would make our own videos too. So if students were totally understanding how to do a concept, they would get really excited about it, but a lot of times they didn't have a chance to share. So we built this time at the end of the day where they could make videos using different either iPad apps or the computer to show off their learning. So in the same way that I'm making the videos to flip the classroom, my students started making videos also to display their learning, and they were super excited about doing that. We also, when the song Happy was first came out and very popular, the day before spring break, I just showed them how to make a video really quickly. We made our own happy video, and we went around the school and videotaped ourselves dancing everywhere around the school. Came back, put my iPhone up on the projector and showed them how to use iMovie to quickly create a video. And within 45 minutes, we had a video that had the music behind it, and the kids were super excited over spring break to have created a video. Some of the programs that I've used to do that, Show Me is my student teacher's favorite iPad app, and Explain Everything is very similar to Show Me. Basically, it's a screencasting software where whatever you do on your screen is videoed, and you talk over top, and your screen is then videotaped, and you can then take that, put it into YouTube or however you decide to put it, how to publish it, Vimeo, and then put it up online. We use so many different kinds, and actually I made my student teacher use many different types of screencasting software and video creation software because I wanted her to see that you shouldn't become reliant on one thing. We all know in education that things change constantly, technology changes constantly. We never know what's going to be out there, so don't become dependent on one thing. Our curriculum changes all the time. It's okay to change. So I was trying to model for her, use different programs so that you're learning things that are out there so you're not stuck to one thing. And she did an excellent, excellent job of that.
Heather, why don't you tell us a little bit in your classroom about how you've had success with sharing devices and things like that. You had a really funny quote for Mary and I while we were out in the lobby waiting for this webinar that kind of applies to this right here.
Oh, I was saying that technology, everyone knows a certain amount of technology. Everybody's in their own sort of journey there. If you look at me, I know a little bit about it. Mary knows quite a bit about it, and you probably know the most. But I was laughing because technology changes so fast that we're all going to be equal in a couple of years. So if you're somebody that, just is nervous about trying some things out, things are happening so fast right now that even the people who are, the go-to people when your smartboard goes down, they're going to be learning right along with you because things are new. Apps are new. Things are just coming out. I think that if you're going to start with technology, start with, it kind of goes with backward design. Start with what are you working on? What skill do you want the kids to have? And then what technology can you use to support that?
Perfect. So we've talked about websites and videos. Those were kind of connected. Now we're moving on to blogging. And Heather, why don't you start off the blogging conversation? You had some really good stories about a student in your class who got so into it that you just lit up when you were talking about it.
Blogging was really a wonderful thing. I had never used a smartboard before last year. I've been teaching for 15 years. I've never used technology in my classroom, and my son in 3rd grade had a teacher that used blogging in the classroom. And my son was kind of a non-writer. I mean, he wrote, but it was, he wrote for his teacher and he wrote for the assignment. He didn't really love it. Well, they did blogging and you couldn't get him off the blog. He was checking it every night. He was going over the neighbors to check it. He was totally into it. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to try it. And so basically what I did, I didn't try to do anything huge. I think you got to start small. I said, okay, I'm going to do a blog, and I'm going to tie it with writing that we're doing in the classroom. So in 3rd grade, they have to write reviews, positive and negative reviews on things. And so we decided the blog would be just for that. And lots of kids love to share. And, there's a couple different models for it. You could take an hour out of your day and have everybody stand up and read and clap and all that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I am always trying to save time in the classroom. So blogging was a great way for kids to get to share and get feedback without taking a lot of class time out to do that. We did reviews. I had a student, a really amazing student with autism in my classroom. I actually had 3. And one particular student was, he would get very frustrated if he was corrected. Nonverbal worked much better for him. So he lit up when we were doing blogs because it's all nonverbal. And he would write things at home. I mean, it'd be 1 o'clock in the morning and he would be writing me a message. He was so into it. And he became a resource for me to help the other kids out. I told the kids at the beginning of this, I said, I've never done blogging before and I'm going to need your help. And so the kids learned so fast that all I had to kind of do was expose them to it just a little bit. And then they ran with it, and they started teaching me how to do everything. And it became very motivating. It's a way to reach nonverbal kids. It's a way to extend the learning beyond the 6 hours that you're together. One kind of fun assignment I did was, it wasn't required. It was just for extra. The kids had to write a review. They were writing all these positive reviews, and nobody had really written a negative review yet, so I kind of tricked them a little bit, and I gave them some cardamom candy. If you've ever had cardamom candy, it looks yellow. It looks like it's going to be very, very yummy, but typically people don't like it. So I had the kids, I said, try this candy at home, write a review on it. Didn't tell them anything about it. So they took pictures, and their reviews were so, so rich, and then they would post them on the blog, and then the other kids would comment and give them feedback on it. So it was just it preserved memories. We're teaching life skills for college. We're reaching nonverbal kids. We're extending learning beyond the classroom. We're exciting kids. And it became leadership for some kids who are normally kind of quiet. You're going to have a kid or 2 in your class every year that has a gift that they can give. You just have to figure out what that gift is. And this particular kid, he just found that he was really good at technology. So next year he's going to be making my videos for my webpage.
Great. Mary, did you want to talk a little bit about your blogging in your classroom also?
I actually use blogging a little bit differently. Generally, when I first started blogging with the students, like Heather, I really didn't know too much about blogging myself. So I just created one blog on my classroom website where students would answer my questions. And so my blog at first was kind of like me handing out, not necessarily a worksheet, but kind of like handing out a worksheet and having them answer questions. And actually the response was about the same as handing out a worksheet. So I think it's really important to point out that just using technology for the sake of using it rather than having an actual purpose to change something is not very useful. It's funny because that same blog that I created with my students 3 years ago is still on my website, and if you go and look at the first blog post that I posted, all of the comments that are coming in still to this day are from the kids who are now going into 8th grade. This is when they were in 4th grade in my class. They're going into 4th or 8th grade, and they just are keeping up with me. They're using it kind of like a social platform, like, hey, Mrs. Wever, how's it going? So not very effective. The next year what I did is had every child have their own place on the website where they could be blogging. Again, not very effective. So after that, I actually had my students create their own websites. And the way that I teach the kids how to do this, I actually indirectly teach them. I don't explicitly teach them. So when I am updating my own website at the end of the day or whatever, I might just put it up on the screen and update my website in front of them, and they are learning. They might be doing something else like cleaning up the classroom or something like that, but they're watching me do it. And a lot of kids will then choose to create their own websites at home with their parents' permission, of course. And this is all after teaching internet safety and all that kind of stuff. But I'm showing them how to do something. They're imitating me. And I just think that's so powerful when a student chooses for themselves to do that. Now, like I said, I did have them create their own websites last year, and some kids used them, some kids didn't. Again, I really think that the kids who used them the most were the kids who wanted to do it themselves and push themselves, and they chose to do it. And that was another thing I wanted to bring up about using technology is, you know, somebody had a question earlier, how can you justify teaching creatively teaching how to use technology when math and writing and reading scores are low? It's kind of the same. I went to an ed camp a couple weeks ago called Nerd Camp in Michigan, and Donalyn Miller was there, and she wrote this book called The Book Whisperer. And in her book, she basically says there's no stronger research than that tells you that students will become better readers unless you give them time to read. So students need to read a lot. I really think that is true with just about any subject that you're teaching. If you give students the time to do anything, they're going to become better at it. And I don't explicitly teach technology in my classroom. I give them time to work on our curriculum and use technology as a tool. And they have seen me use the tool, and that's how they've learned how to do it, rather than me explicitly teaching them how to use the tool.
All right, let's keep this moving. We're at 1:06. We'll come back to Heather here in just a moment. Mary's making a great point, and Heather is agreeing with her. Sometimes it just comes down to time, and that's K through 16. Let's move on to badges a little bit, and I'd love to come back to this conversation a little later in the final questions. But badging is something that's kind of picking up in higher ed, and Mary and Heather haven't used it as much, but it's picking up in K-12 too. I'm sure many of you have heard the term gamifying, and that term really kind of gets under my skin, but it's true. You can make learning fun in some ways, and that's for adults and children alike. So badging is a way to do that. It's almost, you can think of it as just credentials. I don't know if any of you play video games, but if you have an Xbox, you're unlocking badges all the time. Same with a PlayStation, 2, 3. Basically, you achieve something and then get a little token that you achieved it. I've included some of these screenshots here on this slide. MSU, Michigan State University, has a badging system you can use, which is just fantastic. And it allows you to set credentials for when you would award this particular badge to a student. So maybe in Heather's classroom, that student who was gifted with blogging and sharing with his students might have unlocked a badge called Blogmaster or something like that. He would then be able to display that in his Mozilla Backpack and let everybody know that he achieved that. Here at MSU, if you go to the AT&T Awards site, which I will put in the chat in a moment, you can see that one of the online courses that won an AT&T Award for Excellence in Instruction with Technology this year used badging to teach things like how to be responsible online, how to build a LinkedIn profile that people will look at, how to be cool on social media, like not posting, oversharing, things like that. So they went through and unlocked a ton of badges, just that some of them are displaying them on LinkedIn. So if you'd like to talk about badging a little bit in the chat, we'll have time to do that. And in the meantime, I'm going to show you that Mozilla Open Badges is free. This is where you can create badges and issue them to people. And the Mozilla Open Backpack is also free. This is where the recipients of those badges display the badges should they choose to. And some people, even adults, get excited about these and want to display them and put them on resumes and LinkedIn and things like that. So moving on to augmented reality. Mary, this is kind of your game, and you've done some really cool things with it. Why don't you?
Sure. This past summer, or last summer, I guess, I was introduced to augmented reality, and honestly, I have tried everything to get this implemented in my classroom because it is so cool. If you have not seen anything that's augmented before, I guess if you do a Google search, it just brings up Wikipedia articles, but it is very cool. Basically, what you're doing is you are connecting an image in life, like a real image, to something on your computer, on your device. So one way that this is used is I'm going to flip here. This is a picture of Color App. It's COLAR for Augmented Reality. This is an app on any device that basically what you do is you have the kids color, so you print off the coloring sheets that are on the website, and then when you put your device, and you use the app, when you put your device over top of the coloring sheet, the main part of your picture will come to life. So that dragon in the picture is exactly the way that the child colored it, and it's flapping its wings, and I wish you could see it in movement, but it's flapping its wings and blowing smoke out of its nose and turning around, and there's actually music that goes along with it too. And in 4th grade, I was struggling for a little while. I'm like, should I use a coloring page in 4th grade? They're a little past that, but the way that I used this was, again, thinking backwards design. My goal was to teach the Story Mountain, and we were using personal narratives. And I thought, okay, if we use this app, and I have the kids color these pictures, the character in the picture can be the character in their story. And so what I did is I just handed out the coloring pages, and the kids kind of looked at me like, we're coloring? Okay. And they colored their pictures, and I had them write their story. And so they did. And their stories were okay. And then I brought around the iPad, and I augmented them, and every child chose their own picture. There's lots of different characters and everything. I augmented them, put the device over top of their coloring, and their character came to life, and they heard that music. And I mean, jaws dropped. They could not believe that their coloring came to life. And so they were like, oh, Mrs. Wever, can we please, please, please write this again? Like, I don't want this story anymore. I want to write another story. Their stories, one child's story went from being a paragraph to 15 pages. And I only gave them one class period to write, so she obviously took hers home and wrote at home. But just the power of them choosing they wanted to write stories about these characters. And it wasn't about the technology. They were captivated by it. We ended up putting their pictures and their stories up on their lockers, and we put a little direction sheet for people to be able to download the apps when they were walking by our lockers. And so their stories were then published for an authentic audience, which is the people walking by in the hallway, and all the kids in the school were like, oh my goodness, I need to get this color app too. And so it became the buzz around school. Color app is one way to use augmented reality, and actually the Story Mountain, yes, was actually achieved. Their first stories were okay, like I said, but their second stories that they wrote, that they were so much richer. And the interesting thing is, because of the music that was in this app, their stories took on the tone of the music too. So like the dragon stories were like medieval times, and dun, 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 that type of thing was happening in their stories, foreshadowing all these literary elements. The girl, there's a picture of a girl who kind of dances in her living room. Those stories took on kind of a girl, I don't even know how to explain it, but a girly teenagery type voice. So interesting how the voices changed in that too. Some of the other apps that we use for this, Erasma is probably the one that we use the most. That's the one in the middle on the screen. That one is actually awesome because you can take a video. So for the way that we used it is at the beginning of the school year, like I said, I work in an international school, and my students a lot of times don't speak English. So at the beginning of the school year, I had them take my iPhone and record themselves kind of on the selfie mode, saying welcome messages to their parents for curriculum night. Hi, Mom and Dad, this is whoever. I'm really excited about learning this in 4th grade. We took those videos and then augmented them over top of the kids' locker tags. And so when their parents came to curriculum night, they just brought a device with them, and I had put on the website and emailed them to download these apps. Some did, some didn't. And so they downloaded them while they were there if they didn't. And they put their phones over top of their kids' locker tag, and their child's video came up, and their child was welcoming them and telling them what they were excited about in 4th grade. The power of that, though, is we kept those locker tags all year, and at the end of the year, my English language learning students were able to look at the videos of themselves at the beginning of the school year, and they saw how much their English skills had improved, and that was just hugely powerful.
In regard to Erasma, we can say this is probably the one that's best suited for higher ed and adult ed. So I'm much like Mary, who is like using it to facilitate exploration and connection. I'm involved in a large-scale course here at MSU that is aiming to teach freshmen things about campus that they need to know. We're using QR codes. Larissa, you asked if any of us would address if we use QR codes or quick response codes. We're using QR codes to get students to go to certain places on campus, take pictures with a group. So if one person doesn't have a phone, maybe the other person does. And we're really trying to basically turn campus into an augmented reality game for them. So Erasma is really cool in how it can connect you to your environment. Heather, you had some pretty exciting stuff to talk about in regard to this too. Even though you weren't using it, you piped right up with some ideas for how you might use it in your classroom. Do you want to talk about those a little bit?
Yes, I got really excited. Actually, Mary and I went to lunch before this, and we were talking a little bit about augmented reality. And you know what? I went to a technology, I don't know, presentation this summer, and they presented, 15 different things, and my brain was spinning, and I couldn't figure out which one to pick, but they all looked really neat. So I never did try it because there were just so many different things. Well, today we were talking about 2 or 3 of them, which was really nice. And we talked about augmented reality. And in 3rd grade, we have something called the Big Zoo lesson. And all of our kids, we spend a week at Potter Park Zoo, and we observe animals. We think like scientists. We get to see surgeries. There's just a lot of really neat things that happen. And I was thinking one of the, and I haven't done this yet, but I'm going to because I'm excited. One of the things we could do is augment the zoo. And that would just be amazing. And we can work with zoo staff to do this. So not only is it a service project, it's getting information to kids. And one of the things that I noticed when I took my kids there is they weren't using the, they would look at the animals, but they would completely miss the posters or the labels that were on them telling what the animal ate or the country that it was from or some information about it. And I really think that kids need to learn how to read lots of different text structures, and they need to pay attention to a lot around them. And so we were talking about how the kids weren't even looking at text structure. So I'm thinking it would be really, really neat to have some sort of augmented reality right next to some of the signs that they have at the zoo, and I think it would hopefully teach the kids to really pay attention to that, not just walk around the zoo and look at stuff, because it's really great to look at stuff, but there's so much more that you can do with that.
Well, at this point, Dave wanted us to leave about 5 minutes at the end, so I'm going to throw up our cute little mugs here. If you want to talk to any of us about anything, please don't hesitate to email. We've covered a lot of stuff today, but hopefully hearing the stories and what people have done and what the results have been has been helpful. We've had a really good conversation in the chat. I want to turn it over to Mary for some closing thoughts, and then Heather, and we'll open it up. We've got about 5 minutes.
Thanks, Jess. You can actually follow me on Twitter also, and I will follow you back. My Twitter handle is @WeverWorld, and actually that's what I would like to close with. One other thing that has really changed my life this year as a teacher is being on Twitter. I can't even imagine not being on Twitter anymore. I have connected with so many people, both in my area and all over the world, who are interested in the same things that I am. And I'm able to talk to people that you would not normally be able to email or text or make a phone call to. I'm able to get on Twitter, and I'm instantly getting answers to my questions. I've extended my learning so much because of that, but honestly, the relationships that I've built with people have been hugely different because of Twitter. That, and then also Ed Camps, which is a form of professional development where you go and you don't have, there's no agenda. You have no idea what you're going to learn when you get there, and it's all teacher driven. So when you get there, you build your schedule based on what people are going to facilitate when they get there. So if I got there and nobody was presenting or facilitating anything about augmented reality, I might decide that I might do that during an ed camp. Very informal professional development, and it seems to me to be more differentiated. You vote with your feet. So if you go to a session and you're either not connecting or you understand this stuff already, you get up and you go to another session. Very cool, very different than the traditional PD model that we're used to. So I guess Twitter and ed camps, that's what I wanted to end on. So check those out.
And Heather, what about you?
I hope you guys can hear me because my computer has just gone off. But what I would say to everyone is, you know, start with one thing. Think about what you want to teach. Last year I was a person that had never used a smartboard, never did PowerPoint, never did bloggings, never had a website. And I started with one thing. I started with the website, and then I moved on to then I moved on to PowerPoint, and then I moved on to blogging. And those things were so successful that now I'm ready to start something new. So I think, you know, taking on one thing at a time, I think it can get very overwhelming in professional development. That's why I really like the professional development that Mary just mentioned, a little more tailored to needs versus like you could try this. Here's a list of things that you can try. I think the ones that she was talking about are really, really, really helpful. And maybe we can put the information up there in the chat. But yep, start simple. And you know, if you are concerned that your kids don't have access, then pick things that they do have access to, which is what I did. And if you don't have any computers in your classroom, think about grants that you can write. You can go to McCall. There are lots of different places that you can go to for grants. So you can do this. If I can do this, you can do this.
Thanks, Heather, and thank you all for bearing with us. What you can't see behind the curtain is that we're all three in different rooms, so we're communicating mostly via chat and via butting in and handing things over. So I'm going to turn this over to Dave. Again, don't hesitate to email us, and we hope to hear from you soon. Keep an eye out for the blog post as well. Dave?
Thank you so much, Jess, Heather, and Mary. That was really, really informative. I am not a teacher, but I was just very encouraged to hear what you guys are doing in the classroom. I am a parent, and I appreciate teachers like you who go out of your way to teach this way, as well as professors I've had that use technology in this way. It's really great. Anyways, thank you all for being with us. We really appreciate your attendance and your participation in the chat room. We're going to leave the chat room open for a little while, so if you have more questions, feel free to chime in and ask questions as you go, and one of our three presenters will answer them. Just to remind you, we do these webcasts every second and fourth Thursday at 12:30. That's our typical time. However, we also do these, there are special times when we also have presenters that can't present on those times. So next week's presentation is one of our off weeks, July 31st, Thursday at 12:30, and it is also aimed at educators. And it'll be presented by the College of Education and two librarians from MSU on the creative cross-curricular inquiry through the maker movement. That's a tongueful. But I think that's going to be also very fascinating, so if you would like to chime in, that's great. I've mentioned the blog in the chat room several times. Jess will follow up with a blog post on SpartansHelpingSpartans.com that'll kind of integrate the chat into this presentation. You can also find our prior webcasts on that website. There's right there a page that's called Recorded Webcasts, so you can see the things we've done in the past. I shared a blog post that we put out last week that had Mary had a blog post in there. We also have next week's presenter as that has information in there. We also have our schedule that's coming up this next year. So in the Alumni Association, we have a lot of things going on to help support you. So I hope you'll check that out. You can check out our regular offerings on alumni.msu.edu as well. We've got a lot of things coming up this year that I'm excited about that are going to be fun, and we hope that you'll be able to join us. So thank you very much for your participation, and go green.